This is Celluloid Dreams. I'm Tim Sika with Ken Karn here with filmmaker Christopher Nolan, perhaps best known to film fans as the director of Memento, with us today to talk about his latest film, another intriguing winner called Insomnia. Christopher Nolan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Remakes. I always kind of thought they were a dicey prospect.
It's a dirty word.
At best. Yeah, especially when the film being revisited is arguably already definitive. And in the case of Insomnia, the Norwegian original was released just like 5 years ago. So it's fresh in the minds of some people, at least people that have seen it. What was it about this piece that, in your opinion, warranted a remake and convinced you that you could do it?
It was the potential of the central situation to be taken in a very different direction by changing the characters. By changing the characters, you change how the audience feels about the events of the story. And I was really interested in taking this fascinating kind of moral paradox at the heart of this and making people feel very differently than they do when they see the original. I think the original is a brilliant film, but I saw a way of doing something that I think is very different with basically the same narrative, the same events. You take the same events, you change your characters, you change the pressure on the characters going in, and then in that way you change the way the audience feels about the situations they're presented with.
One of the big changes has to do with how the main character, Detective Dormer, sort of deals with the inciting incident of the movie. I don't want to go into too many plot details and spoil it for people, but that to me was the biggest difference. And on paper, that looked like almost a compromise, but it actually worked out really well. I hate remakes too, and I was able to forget enough of the first film while watching your film to enjoy it anew. But talk about Dormer's sort of essential approach to his dilemma that's different between your version and the Norwegian version.
Well, in our version, and I thought this was a great device from Hilary Seitz, the screenwriter. In our version, he comes into this situation with a very different kind of pressure on him. The pressure of a reputation that he's trying to live up to, and that he, somewhere in the back of his mind, feels can be undermined and is going to be undermined. There's a sort of degree of fatalism in the pressure that's on the character from the beginning. This is something, Pacino and I discussed a lot. And when I look at the film now, I realize that in the way we took the material, there's very much a sense in which you're watching the last act of a story. The whole film is very much the last act of a story. And there's a sense in which a lot of the important stuff is the backstory and has happened off screen. And we're seeing this kind of pressured last cycle in a way. It was very much the kind of thing I was trying to do with Memento as well. I'm fascinated by stories that live off the screen a bit and make you think about past events and the other events in the lives of these characters and how they affect everything they do in the present.
What about Dormer's attitude? I mean, it's quite early on. He has the moral dilemma, did I really do something wrong?
Right.
And again, this is the last reference I'll make back to the Norwegian version. The same character in the Norwegian version seemed to be very aware of the step he took and seemed to be a little bit more active in covering his tracks, at least mentally, than in your version.
And to some extent more active in covering his tracks, because I don't think from that character, as I remember, there's much of a sense of agency. There's much of a sense of maybe there was intention. And what I was interested in is the notion of, in that instant of this horrible thing happening that I don't want to give away, that when you do something wrong by accident, immediately, and this is something Al was very insistent on, that it's immediate in his eyes, and he's a performer who's able to convey this. There's doubt as to how did this happen? Did I let myself do this? Is there an intention there? And that with that immediate wrangling, there would be quite an interesting passive direction that the guy's first steps could take on. So his first step is literally passive. He's not lying. He's not, he's just sort of pointing. He went that way. It's nicely ambiguous, and then it sort of builds. But Al was very insistent that for that to work, there had to be this absolute moment of reassessment straight from the second that this thing has happened.
This is one of the most thematically rich films I've seen in a long time. There's so much going on in it. whatever the nature of truth, reality, what is justice, what are the ramifications if we do on some level tell a lie. When you approached this script, I read recently something in Sidney Lumet's book. He was talking about when he approaches a film, especially a film, and many of his films were very psychologically rich. He would look at the script and sort of deconstruct it and say, this movie is about blap. And then he would refer to all the decisions that he made about the characters and stuff to that. What was this movie about for you?
Well, for me, the process of making the film is to some extent the process of figuring out what it's about. I tend to have a thing that I think the film is about, and then in bringing on the sort of performers we have and all the different collaborators, it starts to be about other things as well. To me, it was always about the difference between action and intention, action and motivation. And thematically, it was very much about that area between pragmatism and idealism that the cop figure in American, cinema has always had to dwell in. To me, the whole film was going to take place and does take place in that gray area that cop movies very often reference but don't really take on. We really wanted to take that on. What Al enormously brought to things was the potential that ambiguity of motivation, ambiguity of intention could then enhance those kind of thematic resonances. So he was very much helping me build on those things the whole way through with everything he brought to the character. And then when Robin Williams came on to play the chief suspect, there was a whole level of the discussion of action and intention and the nature of accident that we were able to bring in from that side. So, I found the situation to be thematically very rich and very interesting. And I was very fortunate to bring performers into things who are capable of getting some of those things across without having to talk about it the whole time. It's there in Al's eyes. It's there in some of Robin's little expressions. They're able to communicate an enormous amount in a very short space of time.
The distinction that the Robin Williams character makes between murder and killing, is that sort of what you're going at? The murder Definitely. Being intentional, maybe the killing just being just the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but in the legal sense, I've always been fascinated by this attempt to make distinct the difference between manslaughter and murder, and you hear these legal arguments about intention and this sort of thing, and it's an attempt to make scientific or kind of pinpoint something that's incredibly elusive and mysterious. And that to me is fascinating. And it's those kind of gray areas that, as I say, cop movies very often reference these things in a very shorthand or offhand manner. To me, and I think to the actors, we were going through a process of saying, okay, but let's look at it as if it were real life. Let's look at it as if this dramatic situation fed into real life. What does it then tell us about what really went on? And what I love about the film, the thing I'm really proud of the film, is that if you're interested to see it for a second time, there's a messiness to certain scenes that to me is entirely realistic and entirely appropriate, and that movies don't usually do.
We're talking about Insomnia, and we're talking about it with its director, Christopher Nolan. You mentioned what you loved about the movie. What I loved was the whole pervading darkness thing that existed, where, externally and literally there was only light, and then there was this absence of darkness being one of the contributing factors to Will Dormer's inability to sleep or to rest or to refresh himself. It's almost like he needed that darkness in order to be able to be reasonably balanced, and he couldn't get it. That's very heady stuff for me, and I loved the way it was done in the film, because the film functions primarily as a psychological thriller, I think, fundamentally, and it works that way. But when you look, it's layer upon layer upon layer. Same in life, I guess, if one takes the time to look at life that way. But beautiful job. How did you keep all that stuff straight in your head? Of course, you're known for doing these brain twisting kind of movies here, but
well, the thing I like to tell people about the layering that you try and do as a filmmaker is that I feel a responsibility to do it because I have the time. I've spent 2 years making this film. You're going to spend 2 hours watching it, so obviously I have the opportunity to very carefully address each scene and layer things in that can work on different levels. And the use of light in the movie is one of those that we thought a lot about, because and this sort of comes to pass as you watch the movie. Ultimately, it's not the light that's keeping him awake. Ultimately, it's guilt. It's the things he's tortured by. But it seemed to me that somebody in that mental state, somebody in that heightened situation, in this extraordinary situation he's in, becomes incredibly sensitive to irritants. They become incredibly sensitive. It's a snowballing effect. It's
that normally one wouldn't even
exactly. Normally,
that, yeah.
The blind would be fine. I mean, because people are always asking me, they're like, "Well, don't they have better blinds up in Alaska and all the rest?" And the truth is, no, they don't, because they don't need them. Because people go up and you're a little bit discombobulated, but the fact is, most of us are then able to deal with that and to normalize ourselves. And he's not, through all the things pressuring him. He's in this incredibly heightened state.
With strong, obvious metaphor like the whole thing with light in the movie.
Right.
How did you prevent from overdoing it? How did you know when just a right amount was enough?
Well, I like to think we sort of judged it okay, and really what it was is a process of myself and my director of photography, a very talented young guy called Wally Pfister, who we worked together on Memento. So we have a lot of communication, very easy communication. And I said to him right from the beginning, this is going to be a realistic film. We don't want to shoot this film to look like the standard Hollywood psychological thriller. We want to approach it from a realistic point of view. And I think just having that in the back of our minds the whole time, I think prevented us from ever doing anything that was too far outside those terms. So we use the light, we use shadows in a particular way, in a metaphorical way, but we try to always do it from the point of view of real life.
You mentioned communication with somebody you'd worked with before, Wally Pfister. What about with the actors? Because you're getting people. I mean, when you look at the trailer and they say, Academy Award this and Academy Award, but really you're dealing with people who probably they're very secure and established because they've been nominated or won Academy Awards. But on the other hand, your third movie, working with all these people. How did you find it was difficult bringing these different personalities and actors together?
Sure, it was difficult, but that's kind of the job that I wanted to do. And that's what being a director is all about. It's all about getting a bunch of very different individuals to come together into some kind of cohesive vision, if you like. And these are all incredibly generous performers. And one of the features of really talented actors is an innate and instinctive ability to accommodate other actors. Because the best actors, they're not just talking, they're then listening. And it's always a two-way conversation on screen. It's not this giving a line and then just thinking about the next line, which bad actors do. And these are performers of the highest possible ability. But there's no accompanying arrogance. I think that with the sort of achievement that all these actors have managed to get under their belts, if you like, there's great history to somebody like Al and Robin and Hilary as a younger performer, but already an Academy Award winner. They know how difficult it is to do that. They know the difficulty of what they're doing. And they don't go into a project unless they feel they can trust the filmmaker, because they know they're going to have to give themselves up to me, because the standard of work that they're able to achieve only comes from freedom. It only comes from taking risks and giving yourself over to the filmmaker. So it took me a long time to convince them all to be in the film. But once they were there, they were very happy to be making my film.
Robin Williams plays a role that's sort of atypical for him. How was the part presented to him?
Well, I don't know exactly how the part was first presented to him, but I know that when I met him, he totally had understood what I was after with the character, which is that he's a very ordinary person. He's a very everyman sort of character. He's not, Hannibal Lecter. He's not, the promotion of the movie makes him look a little bit like, crazy psycho guy, whatever. And I think when I tell people that Robin plays the bad guy, they sort of imagine a straight inversion of his manic persona. He's not. This is something I don't think he's ever done before. It's a very everyman quality. It's a very subdued performance. And we both felt that was the whole point of the character. The whole point of the character is the character arises purely from the point of view of us looking at this drama, looking at this narrative and saying, who's this guy in real life? And that's very frightening. I find him terrifying in the movie because of the reasonable nature of his rationalization, the calm nature of it, and his everyman quality. He's the guy sitting next to you on the bus. He's the guy sitting opposite you on the train, and that's why he's terrifying.
Did Robin have any difficulty adhering to the letter of the script because he's so, improvisatory in general?
He certainly didn't have any difficulty. Robin comes at things from a position of being very prepared and doing a lot of takes so that he'll give you what's on the page to begin with, and then we'll try different things. Very much like Al, actually. The two are quite similar in that regard, that they're incredibly well prepared, very hardworking. They give you what's there on the page. They give you what you need to cut the scene, and then they try things, and then they experiment and offer you things. And that's, for a director, that's just a great gift.
We're talking to Christopher Nolan. We're talking about Insomnia. So, Chris, you've directed 3 films that feature psychological conditions. Following, which is like an obsessive kind of voyeurism. Yeah. Then Memento, which is memory loss, and then this Insomnia, which is the inability to sleep. So, my producer wanted me to ask you, what other conditions will you possibly explore in subsequent films, and will any of them involve Jim Carrey?
Yeah, I was like, narcolepsy. I'm going through my list. Arachnophobia. Yeah, no. One of them will involve Jim Carrey because I'm right now writing a film about Howard Hughes for Jim Carrey to star in, and certainly there's all kinds of psychological stuff going on there. But no, it's not. I don't sort of go through my list of psychological conditions and cross one off. But to me, there's a fascination on my part with stories that have an extreme point of view, and stories told from the point of view of somebody who's suffering from a particular perceptual distortion, as in the case of somebody who doesn't sleep night after night after night. To me, that gives you a lot as a filmmaker to work with terms of casting a new spin on perhaps a familiar tale.
Did you do any research on sleep deprivation or how its effects were, or did you just go with what was laid out in the script?
I did a little bit of research, and as with Memento, when I was dealing with memory loss, I'd done a little bit of research, but then for me, the processes of extrapolation from my own life, and I've certainly been through periods where I haven't slept much. In fact, as I was finishing the film, my wife gave birth to our first child, and we didn't sleep for a month as I was finishing the film. So I was very in touch with what it is to not sleep night after night, and that's the way I like to work. I like to work from my own experience, taking that to another level, because I think that if you do that, then hopefully the film doesn't just play to, doctors in the audience. Yeah. It plays to people like me who've experienced this to some degree and then are feeling it blown up, extrapolated, taken into the realm of dramatic film narrative. So that's how I kind of come at things.
Chris, how's the DVD medium been useful to you as a filmmaker?
It's useful to me because with DVD, there is now an outlet for more dense films. Films can become more like books. Home video, starting with VHS, the ability of the viewer to control the timeline so that when they're watching a film and the guy knocks on the door to deliver the pizza, you stop the film, you go, you get the pizza, you get the plates and the paper napkins and all that, and then you start the film again. That's very different to the stream of television that we've been living with for 30 years. That's all changing now. And for me, I'm fascinated with the medium of DVD and all the extras and all the rest. And we've actually just done a special edition of the Memento DVD. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but I
was going to ask you about it.
It's my brother Jonah put an enormous amount of work into the nuts and bolts of it, and it's really the DVD that we had always wanted. And I think it genuinely pushes the boundaries of the format. I think it really actually takes the format to a slightly different place. I think in some ways it's going to change the way people view the format a little bit, because it's a very challenging thing that he's done. It's a DVD that you can explore that is entirely from within the world of the film. It's not your standard, play, special features, all that kind of menu structure. It's very different. Knowing
that a film is going to eventually, or your film will eventually hit DVD in some kind of form for people to study, if you will. Does the DVD aspect of the movie, does it figure in for you and how you approach the theatrical version at all?
Yeah, absolutely. It does. And
in what ways?
My generation are able to make two films at the same time, if you like. We're able to think about that second time viewer. We're able to think about the density of the product and coming up with a film that there is a venue. There's a way that it can be watched. There's a forum for it to be watched more than once. So immediately there's not just the ability, but almost a demand to make things that can sustain multiple viewings. Because I'm always saying to people, films you hate, you wind up seeing 3 times now. You know, you wind up seeing it in the theater and hating it, and then somebody rents it on video against your wishes, and you're watching it, and then you're on a plane somewhere and you watch it, you're in a hotel room and you watch it. I mean, you know, we're getting these kind of repeat viewings. With DVD, there's a more positive aspect of that, which is that ordinary people are collecting films now. Not even collecting them intentionally in the way that people collect things, but it's becoming more like music. It's more like a CD collection. People are buying films that they like and watching them more than once because they're reasonably priced and there are all these extras on the DVD and that kind of thing. So suddenly, you're not just looking at the theatrical release. You're not just looking at the 2 hours of streaming information past somebody on the screen. There is a venue now. There's a format where in the home, people can give the film the same kind of concentration that they would give a theatrical film. And that is very exciting. I mean, that just means that you can put more and more into the film. I mean, to give you a simple practical example, you know, when I go to do the video transfer for Insomnia, the thing we'll spend the most time doing is the 235 transfer, which, you know, 5 years ago would have had almost no outlet whatsoever. So we would have been doing a pan and scan, you know, where you fill the screen and all that. Now there's actually, you know, a format that people are watching the film in a much closer state to its theatrical release at home.
Insomnia here in summation. Mm-hmm. And I think you can answer this without giving anything away, but so what does Hilary Swank do with that bullet at the end of the movie?
I certainly can't answer that without giving everything away.
I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it twice, and I still don't. I mean, I still don't know. I guess it's up to the individual.
Did you feel that ambiguity the first time, or was that some? Because some people, you know, they think it's very straight down the line, and it's not until maybe they see the film.
I felt it ambiguous the first time, and the second time I felt that it was doubly ambiguous. More, yeah.
So, well, that's real life, you know.
It's funny because when I saw it, I knew exactly what she was going to do with the bullet, and I had no question.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's. I mean, I think I know what she did, but I wasn't sure what. And if I had to guess, I'd definitely say what she did with it. But I guess I can't say that. Damn.
No, but you know what? It's great to hear you say that, because it's like the way we treat that was, you know, the demands of a mainstream film. You have to put it up there as something definite. But you get a great actress like Hilary Swank, who's going to play the psychological reality of the situation. And there's something in her body language and there's something in the way she performs it that stops it being a period. It's a question mark. And that's great.
Well, I certainly hope she does what I think she does with it. Anyway, we've been in conversation with filmmaker Christopher Nolan, a director of Following, Memento, and now Insomnia. Chris, thanks for talking to us on Celluloid Dreams tonight.
Thank you.
I'm Tim Sika with Ken Karn for Celluloid Dreams. Insomnia is now streaming on Amazon Prime Video, and Oppenheimer is now playing in theaters everywhere. Next week, more Barbenheimer with actor America Ferrera.